do 6, 7 inverse relations and functions. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but feel free to pause whenever you need some more time or rewind or whatever you need to do in order to accommodate what you need. So 6, 7 inverse relations and functions. Let's first talk about what is a function. This first line here is a little bit wordy and it's a little bit confusing, so I'm going to drop down to the part that says so. It says, so if you have a point AB, it's an ordered pair, then BA is an ordered pair of its inverse. So literally, another way to say this, if you want to find the inverse, all you have to do is switch the x and the y. It says here, if both the relation and its inverse are functions, then they are considered to be inverse functions. What that means, going back to Module 2, if it is a function, then your x values do not repeat. So let's look down here in the bottom right at this figure. We have relation R, and you have the domain, and you see that none of your x values repeat. So that is going to be a function. Now, if you want to find the inverse of R, all you have to do is switch the x and the y values. What was the x values now become the y values. What was the y values now become the x values. And you notice here that when you look at the inverse, you have 1 and 2, and they are both going to 2 separate y values. So that is not going to be a function because your x values essentially repeat. So let's see what this looks like in action when we do problem number 1. It asks you to find what is the inverse of relation S. You're given a table of values, so all you have to do is switch the x and the y values in order to get the inverse. So what was the x values now become the y values. What was the y values now become the x values. It's as simple as that. It's not so simple though when we have a graph. So let's look at B here. What is the graph of S and its inverse? Now you notice you're given points. The easiest thing to do here is going to be to make a table. Let's take these points and make a table. Now the reason I do this is to relate it back to what we just did. If you want to find the inverse, all you have to do is switch the x and the y coordinates. And I'm going to plot those points. Now, we have the relation graphed in blue and we have its inverse graphed in maroon. Now, this is another cool part that I kind of want to show y'all. I'm going to go ahead and plot the line y equals x. And if you look at that line y equals x, along with the points of the relation and its inverse, those points are reflected over that line y equals x. They are a mirror image of each other over that line. So that's how you know you actually did the inverse correctly. So we've looked at it via the table. We've looked at it via graphing. Let's put this all together. If you can do this one on your own, you can stop the video and work it out yourself. Or if you need to follow along with me, go ahead and do so. So on number 1A, it says, what are the graph of t and its inverse? Well, I already have t. Whoops. I already have relation t listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and find the inverse so that way I can just graph all at once. And like we say, what was the x values now become the y values. And what was the x value, or sorry, what were the y values now become the x values. So now I'm going to go ahead and do all of my graphing. I'm going to have 0.0, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, And again, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to just put that line y equals x, so that way we know we got the inverse correct. Now, that's problem 1. I graphed the relation and its inverse. Now I'm ready to answer part B. It says, is t a function? Well, let's look at the x values. Do any of them repeat? No. So this is a function. So we would say yes. No x values repeat. And now let's look at the inverse. Is this a function? No, this is not a function. Why is this not a function? Because we have that -3 repeated there. We can't have x values repeated. Now, this is the end of the first part of today's lesson. I'm going to pick up with the next video talking about inverse equations. So go ahead. If you need more time, you can stay here or you can move on.